Hi there, this is Catherine with Enfolded Heart Music. Welcome back to Lyre Foundations. Today we're going to be finishing Chapter 1 by going through Lesson 3. In this lesson we're going to be talking about how to tune your lyre, some suggestions about that, some kind of warnings about that, and also how to finish setting up your lyre. I've got some suggestions for some visual landmarks. So let's jump in first to tuning and then we'll go to the final preparations. Okay, let's jump in now to how to tune your lyre. Now, before we get into the actual steps, which I've got on pages 13 and 14, we need to understand a few things about the lyre and some things to remember so that we know how it works and we don't damage our instrument while we're doing this. Okay, the first thing is to understand that when you're tuning it, you need to go in very, very small increments. It's going to be, really quite tiny. It's actually what makes tuning the lyre a little bit more difficult than, for example, the guitar. Remember, we have our tuning pegs, which are up here, which are connected to the string. This is our tuning wrench, and this should come with your lyre. If not, then you should contact the person who sold you the lyre because it should come with it. Don't lose this. You can buy another one, but you don't really need to. This should last you a lifetime. So this tuning wrench goes over each one of these pegs, and you're going to rotate it in order to raise or lower the pitch. Now, what I mean by in small increments is if you're to put this on here and turn it, in either way, especially if you're tightening it, you're going to go way, way past what you need to go to. Even if you're first getting your lyre and you're tuning it, you're probably going to need to do the most tuning at that part, again, when you're first getting your lyre. But when you do that, even if you need to go farther than you normally will, do it at very, very small increments. Otherwise, you're going to break a string or break the instrument. All right? So that's the first thing, small, small increments. The second thing is that you need to tune your instrument in the way that it was made to be tuned. So either on the description of your product or, maybe there was a piece of paper that was sent with it. It should tell you, okay, this is a F, I can't remember the number, a F3 or a G3 or a, something like that. It should tell you both the letter, A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, and the octave, which is going to be usually, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2, something like that, within that range. Not that many numbers, just one of those numbers. So that tells you how high and low and which specific pitch. You need to tune your instrument to those pitches. The reason for that is because that's how the lyre was built. For example, this low, I have it as an F sharp right now. This F, or F sharp, it has a much thicker and much longer string than my highest note, which is a C sharp right now. This is much thinner and shorter compared to this low one. And it's like that because that's what's necessary to actually make that pitch sound on the instrument. This part of the instrument is longer than this part. So for example, if I am trying to make this F sharp, 4 or 5 notes lower than it, that's not what it was made for. The string is going to be way too wobbly. It's not going to have the right tension. It's going to sound really quite terrible. You would need a much longer instrument. You'd need a thicker string. You'd need a lot of things done differently in the actual construction of the instrument. Same thing with the high one, especially if I try and raise this, say, this C, I'm like, well, I want to get to an F, a high F. Okay, if I try and make this an F, I'm going to break that string or I'm going to crack my instrument. Probably break the string, but if you have a lower quality instrument, you're going to be putting a tension on here between the peg and the part where it goes into the lyre. You're going to be making it so tight. It was not made to go that tight. And there's a pressure on the instrument, and so you're going to damage your instrument, or if nothing else, break that string and snap it right off the bat if you try and do that. This is also why you want to go in small increments, because if you go too high or too low, especially too high, you won't break a string if you go too low. You'll break it if it's too high because you have too much tension on it, and that string was not made to have that much tension, that amount of tension. Okay, so know what pitches your instrument was made to play and play within that range. The only caveat to that is if you want to go into another key, which I'll explain what that means way later in our course. But for example, if you want to raise you want to play, this right now is tuned in D major, so I've got all my Fs and Cs sharp. I have raised all of these a half of a step. So technically, this was not made necessarily specifically to play F sharps and C sharps, but it's within the range of playability of it. If I try and go above that, first of all, I'm going to start knocking into the other strings, meaning if I go up from an F sharp to a G, well, I already have a G right here, so I don't need two Gs. Okay? You only need to go up or down a half a step. So if I wanted to be in F major, I would need all my Bs to be B flat. And that's a half of a step. So if you need to make something a sharp or a flat, then take the string itself. So maybe I need to make all my Fs sharp. Okay, then I take my F string, and only my F string, and bump that up, tighten that to where it is raised to an F sharp. That's not an F, that's a C, sorry. Here's an F. If I want to make my Bs B flat, I take my B string, lower it, loosen that string to make it a B flat. And that's it. That's the only kind of wiggle room I would suggest, and I would highly suggest this. I've had a number of people ask me, why are my strings breaking? Or why does it not sound good? Well, your instrument was not made to do that. So know what it's made for. This kind of goes back to sort of day one with these videos. Okay, so know what it's made for, and stick within that range, plus or minus a half a step. Okay, if you just have, if you're just getting your instrument, you need to let the strings settle a little bit after your first tuning and keep tuning that. This may take a month or two to really settle in, because the wood is expanding or contracting. This is also true when there's a huge weather change. It may take some time for things to settle in, so don't worry about that. Just keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on it and adjust it as you need to, and don't be alarmed if you've just tuned it and then it goes out of tune as you keep playing it. If it's a brand new lyre. Okay. When you need to replace lyre strings, I personally have never had to do this with Brandon's work. But find out what the proper thickness of those strings are. Like I said at the beginning, my lowest string and highest string have very different thickness to them. And I had to ask Brandon, okay, what do I need to have on here? I have some backup strings. And so he told me it's called the weight of them. So you need to know what are the proper strings to be replaced. It can't just be any string. Okay. And in general, with a well-made lyre, your strings should really stay in tune for the most part. Mine's a little bit out of tune right now, but I decided to leave that because I knew I was going to make this video. Sure, when you have weather changes, it's going to need to be adjusted. And if you were playing inside and then you go outside and sit in the direct sun and it's 90 degrees outside, then it's probably going to change on you. But barring those more extreme environmental changes, it should hold pretty steady. This is probably one of the biggest differences that is at least immediately noticeable to a lyre player when you're going from like a mass-made instrument to one that's made by a luthier, is that the pegs and the strings are of much higher quality and they are constructed much more securely, and so they stay in tune. Okay, now let's go into how to actually tune it. Okay, I've made some really specific instructions on, again, pages 13 and 14. Excuse me, I'm not going to read through that because I'll articulate it already. You're going to take your tuning wrench and, well, let's actually start with a tuner. Let me back up. I just use my phone for this. You can buy a separate tuner. There's all sorts of different tuner apps. What is mine called? Tuner Pitched, and it has a little tuning fork. All right, you want to have it set on chromatic. A lot of tuners will have different options. You want to have it on chromatic, and you're likely going to see some variation of something like this. So let's see if you, yeah, okay. And the general idea is that you want that needle to be in the center when you pluck a string. Sometimes they will give you like red if it's too far flat or too far sharp. Flat is going to be when it's going to the left. Sharp is going to be when it's going to the right. Flat means it's too low, the pitch is too low. Sharp means it's too high. Okay, so when I pluck a string, I want to look to see where this needle goes. Okay, so let's see if I can have it where you can actually see. So I'm going to do my F sharp right now. And it should, right here is the pitch. So apparently I'm talking at D sharp 3 right now. All right, so this should be an F sharp. Let's do that again. So you can see, and I knew my lyre was a bit out of tune, you can see this F sharp is quite flat. Because again, we want that needle to be in the center. Now you can't talk while you're actually trying to tune because it's going to pick up other sounds. So what I'm going to do, and I can't do this and show you at the same time, I'm going to take my tuning wrench, put it on the tuning peg. I'm going to pluck the string and tune at the same time. This also helps you not tune it, not, adjust the string too much and damage the instrument or break the string. You're going to just tiny, tiny, tiny increments. So it's flat. I want it to be raised. I want it to go higher. I want it to be more sharp, for lack of better words. In order to do that, I need to tighten the string. Okay? With the way that my instrument is wound, and this is usually the way that it's wound, meaning how the string is actually around the tuning peg, I need to make the tuning peg go this direction. This is what I have on page 14. It needs to go this way. So I'm going to turn my wrench this way. I'm going to have it like this, and I'm going to go like this. I'm not going to do it nearly that much, but I'm going to just turn it just a little bit this way. Because when I turn it this way, you can see it makes it rotate to the right. And if you just look at the peg and the string, I can see that, oh, when I tighten this, yes, it's going to pull it. It's going to wrap more of the string around the peg. If I wrap more of the string around the peg, that means I'm tightening the tension on the string, and tightening the tension will raise the pitch. All right, so let's do that. Let's try and get this F sharp actually in tune. Okay, let me show you what it looks like now. I don't know if you could hear that. It was a kind of a quiet noise, but here we go. Here's what it looks like now. See how it turned green? So we're pretty close. We're pretty close. Oops. I'm not going to do this here because it'll be much too long of a video, but I could make it, I raised it almost a little bit too much because it turns green after the pitch has kind of fallen a little bit. But that will take a little bit of time for me to get it just on the right pitch. One thing I want you to take note of is that I took the tuning wrench off before I plucked it again to see if the string was actually in tune. I have noticed that sometimes if I leave the tuning wrench on, if my hand's kind of hanging on it, or if I just leave it on, the pitch is a bit different. It can also create a rattling noise, so take that off and then listen. Make sure that you're plucking it not with the kind of strength and how you're actually going to play the instrument, not real lightly and not super strong. Okay, once I'm pretty satisfied with that, I simply move to the next string, which is G. Again, I almost put it on. I don't put it on. I want to see where it's at first. It's gotten cold here recently, so it's also flat. I'm not going to go through every string. I just want to show you for illustration. See, it's also quite flat. So we would do the same thing. Put this on here. I pluck it. Raise it just a little bit. Now let's see how it is. You could probably hear it sounds a lot different. It's because it's much too high. Now, again, how would we lower this pitch? We talked about raising it. How would we lower the pitch? Because it's far too high right now. I've been turning it like this. Now I need to turn it this way. I need to loosen the tension on that string to lower that pitch back just a little bit. Okay, so I'm here. Again, if I wanted to raise it, I'd move the handle this way. If I want to lower it, I move the handle this way. So I want to lower it a little bit. And now I'm kind of going back and forth. Okay, for the purposes of this, that'll be good enough. So here we can see now it's pretty close. See, that's still a bit too high for me. I would adjust that. This does take some patience. But once you've got it set, it should be good for quite a while. So you want to do that with every string. You go up each one. Okay, it's all quite flat. The whole thing is quite flat. And if that's the case, either you've just gotten your lyre and it still needs to take some time to settle in, or you've got a temperature change, which is exactly what has happened here recently. Okay, if you have finished doing each individual string, the other way, if you really, really want to get it nice and in tune, this is what I do before I record any song, is to compare the strings to each other. So what I mean by this is you want to do it in octaves. An octave is the same note higher or lower, for lack of better words. So for example, if I want to compare my F sharps, I have my C sharps. I have 1, 2, 3. Now these are all flat, but they're all too flat. What is what I mean? They're C sharps, but the pitch is too flat. But say I've already tuned them, then what I do is I would play them together. Let's play these two. And then I play these two. And you have to listen to see if, essentially, if the wavelengths are matching up. If they're kind of going like a wah, 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 then they're not in tune. And you will hear, the listener will hear that dissonance more, in a certain sense, more than if the whole instrument is too sharp or too flat. So I would compare these. If that sounds good, compare these. If that sounds good, play all three together. And they should sound nice and harmonious. Okay. You can also do this not just with octaves, but in thirds or fifths. So 1, 2, 3, or fifths 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do the major one. Fifth. And then 1, 3, 5. So nice chords. See how they actually work with each other. So to summarize that, once you've used the tuner, or if you're a musician who can do this by ear, maybe you play the violin or something, you tune each string to the lyre, to the tuner. Make sure they're generally in tune, and then put the tuner aside and compare each note. What I find is that, say there's two notes that when I play them together, like in chords or octaves, that are really, really dissonant, one of them is usually a little bit flat and the other one a little bit sharp. And so when I was using the tuner, I thought, it's close enough. It's as close as I'm going to get it. But when I play it together, it being a little sharp and a little flat makes it sound horrible together. And so I need to adjust at least one of those. All right? So tune it with the tuner, then tune it to each other. Okay. Once you've got that, again, if you have any questions about it, it's really a pretty simple process, but it can be quite a tedious process. If you got any questions, though, let me know. And I'll, again, happy to help as I can. We're going to come back, and I've got one little comment to make about some visual landmarks. Okay, one last aspect of setting up your lyre after you've got it tuned. This is something that was recommended to me by a friend who is a harp player, and I double-checked this with the luthier as well to make sure this was okay. So I've gotten the thumbs up on this. The luthier actually said this is what he uses for his instrument, for his lyres. So this has to do with visual landmarks. I'm sorry, let me open this up. Okay, So if you've got 16 or 19 or even 10 strings, unlike something like the piano, where you have some visual landmarks, you can tell what note is what. When you start looking at this, they all kind of start to look the same. And it's very, very hard to play like that. And we can't see them in relation to each other very well. So what the friend suggested to me, and I am forever grateful for the suggestion, is that she color-coded some of her strings in the same way that the harp is color-coded. That is, you make all the C strings on your instrument blue and all the F strings red. You can then glance at your lyre and see all the other strings in relation to these. So for example, if I see one of my silver strings right above a blue string, I know it's a D because I know that the blue string is a C. If I see my silver string that's 2 strings above my blue one, I know it's an E because I have C, D, E. It's also 1 note or 1 string lower than the F, and so I also know it's an E in relation to that. And the same is true with any of the other ones. So that's very, very helpful. I use Sharpie, and this is what was recommended to me. I would not use, and really, really warn against, using something like paint or nail polish, something that has weight to it, because your lyre is dependent upon how much and in what way the strings vibrate. If you put something on top of it that mutes it in any way or that alters the vibration of it, it's going to alter the sound and you're going to ruin those strings. Okay? It just will not work the same way. The thing with Sharpies is that it's just ink and it's very, very lightweight. And again, Brandon said that this is what he used. I asked him first because I didn't want to destroy the instrument, and it works just fine. I haven't noticed any negative effects whatsoever, and I've been doing this for over a year now. Okay. I don't know if you can actually see it on my lyre. I don't think you can because I don't, yeah, let me turn my lyre. You may be able to see it from this perspective. That's also sort of doubtful. But I basically mark it. I don't mark the whole string because I don't even look down here when I'm playing. I'm looking up here. I also don't like to mark my tuning pegs because that's not where I look to play the string. I mark basically from here to here on my strings. And I mark it on the side that's facing me. So if you were to look from the other side of the instrument, you wouldn't see any of the ink because there's nothing over there because I don't need to do that. Sometimes it does come off a little bit and I have to reapply it, which is why I keep Sharpies with me. But I really don't have to do it all that much. I basically end up applying it right above where my hand naturally plays. Sometimes I do a little bit below and then I'm playing and I've got ink on my hands and it's fine. It didn't hurt anything. And it's as simple. I always get nervous. I don't want to get something on the instrument. But it's as simple as taking the Sharpie and just having a small application there. Make sure you're on the right string. And that's about it. I'll do the red so you can also see that. Just take note of, what part of the lyre, of the string, you're coloring. And I like to do it while I'm holding it because then I know if I can really see it or not. Sometimes I've done it where I have the lyre on the ground and then I actually hold it like I play it and I can't see what on earth I just did because I marked a different part of it and it didn't really sort of carry through. So that's it. But it makes a world of a difference and it gives your eye something to latch onto. Okay, so again, red on F's, blue on C's. You could use different colors, but that's sort of a standard from the harp and makes a big difference. Okay, let's close up this chapter with a few concluding comments. All right, now we finished up chapter 1. This is the last lesson in chapter 1. We have got everything set up now. We've talked about posture, we've talked about tuning and setting up visual landmarks for the instrument. And of course, we started with talking about what the lyre actually is and getting to know the instrument. So you should be all settled in. Of course, you might make some adjustments as we actually start to play in the next chapter. But come back to these as you're going through some of those other exercises, and make sure that you're not adjusting things that shouldn't be adjusted. I hope this chapter is helpful for you, of course, and very soon I'll be making videos for chapter 2, and that is really we're going to start building our muscle memory, our strength and dexterity, our capacity to play with 2 hands, all that kind of good stuff. So come back for that, and let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I'll do my very best to help as I can. Thank you so much. God bless you, and may the peace of Christ be with you always.